And this is December the 19th, 2012, the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of San Felipe Del Rio S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D. We have a quorum, Mr. Overfeld, correct?
Yes, sir.
We have a full board.
Yes, sir.
We'll call this meeting to order. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members is present, that this meeting's been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. So at this time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence to reflect in your own way. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. It brings us to agenda item 4, public comments. Ms. Falcone, no registered individuals for public comments. Thank you. Which now takes us to item number 5, information item. With information item 5A being recognition of UIL Elementary District Champions. Presenter, Ms. Rufina Adams.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and members of the board. We held our UIL Elementary Academic District meet this last weekend, Saturday, December the 15th, and we had over 400 children compete from our 7 area elementary schools. It was a fantastic meet. It was so nice to see so many children from 3rd grade to 5th grade competing, and they competed in 6 different events. They competed in ready writing, oral reading, number sense, music memory, dictionary skills, and spelling. And of course, these are 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade students, and we accumulate all the points. Our 3rd grade district champions was Lamar. Our 2nd place was Dr. Lonnie Green, and it is my great joy tonight to present to you our 1st place district champions, Buena Vista Elementary. And I do want to add that this is the 4th consecutive year that Buena Vista has been named 1st place district champions. And here we have some of the students that participated along with the coaches and the administration. We're extremely proud of these children because, as you know, these are the same children that will continue to compete in UIL throughout middle school and through high school, and then this is where we get our state champions from. So I'm very proud, and I congratulate all of you today for being in UIL, and I hope that you continue to grow with our program. And we thank you and parents for everything that you do for your children. I know it was difficult to get them to practice and pick them up, but it was a great opportunity, and I'm glad that you guys are in it, and I congratulate everyone. Yes. We're going to need to squeeze you guys together. 3 lines, please.
The big kids on the back.
And have the little ones in front. And this is just some of the children that participated. Like I
All the
said,
little
we
ones
had
come
over
up here.
400 children competing.
You guys come over here, get a little closer.
All right, everyone say UIL.
We need everybody to squeeze in a little more.
And while they're making their way, I would like to tell the board that it was also, our UIL meet was served as an open house for Lamar. And we had mariachis and all sorts of entertainment that day. It was an awesome, awesome day. Thank you, Lamar and Calderon, for graciously hosting. Do you have any questions?
All right, I have a comment that's certainly impressive, and congratulations to all participants and the winners. They have definitely made the district proud. I'm sure everyone on the board feels that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to information item 5B, which is recognition of the E-Cadet champions. Mr. Roger Gonzalez, Kate Director, presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and members of the board. It is my pleasure as CTE Director, Career and Technical Education Director for the school district to present the E-Cadet winners this year. And I have a little PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the accomplishments of the E-Cadet program. This is actually new to CTE. The E-Cadet Roundup is actually a new program where every child aspiring to desire for engineering and technology, and it's called E-Cadet for Elementary. It's a career and technical education pilot elementary robotic program that introduces 4th and 5th grade students to real-world engineering. Elementary school students get to design, build, test programs, robots using Lego Mindstorm technology, apply real-world math, science concepts, learn critical thinking, team building skills, and participate in tournaments and celebrations. And here are some statistics. The number of elementary campuses participating was 7. The number of teams, 22. We had one of the elementaries actually having an additional team. So the number of teams per campus was 3. The number of students participating in the E-Cadet program was about 84. The number of girls enrolled in E-Cadet program was 58%. The number of minority students enrolled in E-Cadet programs, again, 80%. And the number of contests that we had this year was 3. We had 2 scrimmages and the actual championship. And the reason that we're highlighting the girls and the minorities and so forth, because that's part of PBMAS as far as the students that actually are not the norm of taking engineering classes. Kids could participate in robotics programs. 50% are more likely to attend college, twice as likely to major in science or engineering, 3 times as likely to major specifically in engineering. Young women in robotics programs are 4 times more likely to pursue science and engineering in college, and minority members of robotics teams are more than twice as likely to enter the fields of science and engineering. Again, this is from the Brandeis University study. So again, I'm proud to announce the actual winners, and to help me do the presentation is Mr. John Reed, our engineering teacher at middle school. He spearheaded the E-Cadet program. Mr. Reed, and Mr. Villager is here from the high school also. And Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis is also from the Del Rio High School. We're going to start off with third place, Buena Vista, third place. Cindy Salas, principal. If Ms. Salas can come up here. Terry Schultz is the sponsor, and Ms. Schultz can come up here. And these are the winners from third place: Emmanuel Sanchez, Juan Salinas, James Morin, and this group was called the Avengers. Also, this team from Buena Vista got the Gracious Professionalism Award, which is actually recognized in engineering, from Dr. Flowers, an MIT professor that started the first engineering competition, robotics competition, and it was for people that actually help others during the competition. Even though they actually compete against each other, they were actually awarded with the Gracious Professionalism Award also. Congratulations. Second place is coming from Calderon Elementary, Brianna Muraida, if she can come up here. We had two teams actually placing, but the second place is Coyote Steel, and that was her name. Jacob Coronado, Dalina Dominguez, Clarissa Gonzalez, and Gerard Stanek. Okay. And the sponsor, Mona Furtado. This is second place. Second place, Calderon Elementary. First place, also coming from Calderon, Cobra Steel, Jackie Cázares, Houston Esquivel, Javier Garcia, Mauro Garza, Hugo Moreno, Austin Ramirez, and that is Cobra Steel. And also Nerissa Herrera Wynn as a sponsor.
Great job.
This is actually our kickoff to robotics at the high school. This is actually a first year program for E-Cadet, and we hopefully to build it next year. We had 22 teams. This year, we're hoping for 28.
Time Warner donated 7 kits,
Yeah.
so every elementary would get another robotic kit.
So, yes. It's actually sponsored by Time Warner. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you very much.
Alright guys, can I get all you guys together to take one quick picture? Just small guys, come up front.
Okay, guys, bring it. Hold around from the right down the steps. There you go. What, come in the back?
The little ones way in the front. Yeah. Squeeze more this way, guys. Alright, say cheese, guys. Alright, one more. There we go. Thank you.
CT is proud to announce the E-Cadet program, and with the help of all the principals, administrators, sponsors, and of course the parents. Thank you so much.
Again, that's outstanding. Congratulations to the participants and the winners, and Mr. Gonzalez and the coaches and teachers. Again, certainly makes the district extremely proud. Mr. Overfeld?
Like Mr. Garabini was saying, yes, it's an awesome thing. I had the chance to be there during the competition, visit with the kids, and how excited they are to go in and show you these really, really advanced Legos. I wish we had something like that when I was in elementary. That would have been really cool there. And I don't think I've ever seen a robotics team get escorted into the old gym by the Ram Band drum line. And that was really awesome there. So yes, it's a great thing, and I hope to see it grow over the next couple of years. Y'all did very good with that. Thank you.
Yeah, especially, what was the, Mr. Gonzalez or Mr. Reed, what was the name of, it was a sportsmanship award of something?
Gracious professionalism.
Gracious professionalism. Really nice. Very good. Okay, that brings us to information item 5C. First one being Ruben Chavita Elementary Construction Update. Presenter, Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, Dr. Ackerman. I'm pleased to report that our library is now up and running at Ruben Chavita. At our last board meeting, they were in transition, and we said it'd be about 2 weeks, and so they have been open for a little over 2 weeks. And Mr. Graves has several photos to share with us.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the connecting corridor to the library from the existing building. An interior view of the library. The school colors are gold and black. When we took these, they'd cleaned up everything, had all the books in their places. Looked a lot better than when I saw it originally. They're still doing a little bit of work in there, but they had most everything in its place. This is a classroom in the library. Are there any questions on the library portion?
Looks good.
That's great.
The gymnasium is,
Mr. Chavita, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that I was there, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, and it was, no, last week. And it's real nice. It's real, the color scheme was real nice, really.
I think it
Congratulations.
turned out real well.
Real pretty.
The gymnasium, the exterior is probably 95% complete. They were doing some site work around the building, cleaning that up, pouring the sidewalks, installing handrails. The connecting walk to the existing building is will be an open covered walk. They still need to put the roof on there, painting. Interior view, this is a new type of installation that we've been using. It covers up a lot of the structure up above, the purlins. It gives more of a continuous insulation effect to the roof, and it's more energy efficient. A view back towards the toilet rooms. They have most of those walls framed up. They have started sheetrocking those walls recently. The area up above, the mezzanine storage, is pretty much complete. It's mainly a, kind of a bare area. We have the, air conditioning units up there. The, have a pull-down stair to have access for maintenance. The wire up above is the partition from the second floor down to the first floor. The contractor did a real good job on that. Again, another photograph of that. Are there any questions on the gymnasium?
Mr.
I wanna
Mesa,
say-
comment, question?
I just wanted to say, Mr. Graves, that I'm glad to see plenty of sunlight coming through, and so we can save on our electrical costs as far as lighting.
Right.
And I really like the enclosed walkway to the library. Now, I know this is open, but I think it's important to point it out because, you know, you're carrying books and things that can get wet during inclement weather. And I hope at some point, you know, we consider enclosing all our walkways, but I remember when we had no walkways
Had no
whatsoever.
walkways at all. I
So
remember that also.
It's a big improvement, and I think the drainage problem was a big issue back then, and I'm glad to see that those areas are being looked at before, you know, construction is complete.
Right.
So, thanks again, and I'm glad to see some storage, because that's something that's always needed by all gymnasiums. I know that at Calderon, for example, they store a lot of the equipment that they use in the area that is just
Up above, right.
above. Thanks.
This is the area that the contractor is getting ready to go into this next week. I think they're going to start Wednesday. There is some concrete that needs to be cut out to install plumbing to connect up the new toilet rooms. They're going to do all the heavy, loud work while school is out. They will be working on this for probably, I'm going to say up through January at least on it. Anyway, this is on the right there. It was the existing library. That has been moved out. That will now become the administrative area. Those two doors kind of down at the end on the left, that will then become the main entrance to the school. There is a vestibule there. Some of the floor tile has been removed where we're going to have a secondary vestibule going into the principal's office.
We're basically going to seal that off so that there's a single point of access in line with our emergency operating procedures for the school district.
Once they're brought through the main security vestibule, that has an electric strike on it controlled by the administrative area. Then they'll come into a secondary area before they get in, and they'll have to go into the principal's office, those double doors there. And this is what the inside of the old library looks like now. They still have a little bit of equipment in there that needs to be moved out, but it's pretty vacant compared to what it was on there. And so basically that's where the contractor is going to be building new partitions for principals, vice principal offices, toilet rooms, storage areas involved. Are there any questions on the administrative area?
Mr. Mesa has a question.
It's more for Mr. Salinas. What will become of the old administrative offices?
Counseling areas and also any other areas for itinerant folks, for example, from special ed.
Oh, good,
So they'll be taking over those office areas.
good. I know the areas that they're always looking for room are the speech therapists and,
Yes, sir.
and dyslexia teachers, and
Yes, sir.
especially the older campuses.
Correct.
Okay, Thanks.
Thank you.
That concludes that presentation. We're going to move on to the Bank and Trust Ramfield. Mr. Garabedian.
Okay, that brings us to information item C2. Go ahead, Mr. Salinas.
Right after our groundbreaking with the city and the Bank and Trust, those trusts have started to go up, so a lot of work has been done since then, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Graves to share that with y'all.
This is a front view. The green entrance, the old entrance there, in order to satisfy exit requirements, we're going to be redoing that. And it would still have two arches, but they're going to be wider. In the background, you can see that they've pretty much framed up that west side bleacher shelter. They were finishing up some welding today on it. They still have the roof to install, and on our renderings, we showed a blue roof on top, and blue tends to fade quite a bit. We're still investigating that. We would paint all of the columns and the structure underneath blue, but we may look at going to plain galvanized on the roof itself on it. You do see a little bit of the roof. When I drove by today, you can, if the roof were blue, you'd be able to see it. We're still investigating that, so we hadn't made a final decision on it. I kind of like the blue roof on it, but we don't want something that's going to look bad in 15, 20 years on it. This is a slab that they poured. This is where the ticket booth is and the press box. They're actually farming and putting in plumbing for the main slab on it, but they did get this one poured. That way they can go ahead and continue with the next frame on there. To the right there is where the concession restrooms will be built. They do have all of the plumbing roughed in. It looked like it was ready for the city inspection on it. And that was all. Any questions on the Bank and Trust?
Dr. Keys has a comment or question.
Out of curiosity, either one of you, do you know what the capacity is going to be there? The seating
It's going to be
capacity?
around 560, I think.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brings us to information item 5D, update on district emergency procedures in the event of a crisis. Presenter, Mr. Miguel Salinas and Chief Raymond Haynes.
I'm glad you're here, Chief. Thank you, sir.
We're standing outside. Okay. I started to take part in UIL presentation.
Okay. Well, good evening again. We were asked to provide an update on the district emergency procedures for our district in light of the recent school violence that has occurred in Newtown, Connecticut. All school districts are reviewing their emergency operation plans. And our TEA Commissioner Williams actually sent out a memo making that a formal request. So with that said, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background in that Senate Bill 11 in 2005 amended Chapter 37 Education Code by adding Section 37.108. And this section reads that multi-hazard emergency operation plans and security audit. And what does that mean? This mandated that each school district shall adopt and implement a multi-hazard emergency operations plan. So our school district developed and adopted a multi-hazard operations plan on March of 2006 that addresses the 4 phases of emergency planning, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And that was adopted by the school board March of 2006. So mitigation is to reduce or eliminate a risk. So what is our district doing to mitigate a potential risk to us? The following are just some examples of what our district is currently doing per the requirement. Obviously, prior to that, they were called crisis management plans. Prior to that, they were called something else. But in 2005, with Senate Bill 11, it mandated the school districts have a specific plan that was multi-hazard. So we do background checks for HR employment, and at the campuses, we have a screening process for offenders, sexual offenders. We have a district police department and security force in the district. We have fire alarms. We have fire marshal inspections. We have different types of locking mechanisms. We have perimeter fencing, security audits, security cameras, smoke detectors, etc. So all of these are examples of mitigating a potential risk to the school district. The next phase is preparedness, the practice of being in a ready state, such as evacuation drills for fire, for an explosion, a smell of smoke, gas odor, bomb threat, to name a few. A lockdown drill in the event of an intruder, a dangerous animal on campus, such as a dog or a skunk. A hostage situation, an active shooter, or a hostile individual. The tornado severe weather drill. Obviously, it's just for different types of severe weather. The reverse evacuation drill in the event of a suspicious or threatening person that is outside the building while students or staff are outside. Shelter-in-place drill in the event of a hazardous chemical spill outside of the building, etc. The next phase is response. Immediate reaction when there is an event by activating our emergency operations plans, by dialing 911, and by having our multi-agency response activated. And what do I mean by that? This is a flow chart that has been developed by the City of Del Rio Emergency Management Coordinator, Mr. John Sheedy. We've been trying to implement this for years because we've been having these meetings, as I indicated, when the policy was adopted back in 2006. And it shows here the different law enforcement agencies that would respond immediately to a crisis within the school district. Obviously, our law enforcement partners are listed here. By the way, we met Monday at 10:30 in the morning, and present was Del Rio PD, Val Verde Sheriff's Office, DPS, School Police, Laughlin Security, and United States Border Patrol. We also had the Texas Ranger participate. We also had fire department participation with Mr. John Sheedy. The other category is the emergency medical response. So when they respond to a crisis within the school district, it is under the National Management Incident Command System. So it's a multi-agency, and per this flow chart, it determines whether we're going to have strictly an incident command at the school district or whether there's going to be a multi-agency incident command set up. And you just follow the flow chart. If it's a no, then the responding agency is incident command, and they take care of the situation. If it's a multi-agency, you go over here to the yes, and the responding agencies are under the unified command based on, again, the National Incident Management System. At some point, these 4 individuals over here, called the EMCs, the Emergency Management Coordinators, there's one for the Laughlin Air Force Base, there's one for the City of Del Rio, There's one for the school district, which, by the way, I am the EMC for the school district, and there's one for the county. Those individuals, once they're notified that there is an incident occurring, have these responsibilities that are listed down here for you. The last phase of emergency planning is recovery, the process of repairing or restoration, putting things back in order after an incident. So there's cleanup, there's rebuilding, counseling, debriefing, etc. So in summary, the campuses have emergency operation plans in place as mandated by Education Code Section 37.108. The campus emergency plans are practiced on an ongoing basis. However, after meeting with our principals just yesterday, it was determined that this is not happening on a consistent basis, and we will be addressing that. The district has a multi-agency process to respond to district crisis and is reviewed on an ongoing basis. As I indicated earlier, Monday we met again with our law enforcement partners to review our multi-agency response flowchart. All emergency plans are being reviewed for continued improvement. As I indicated, we met yesterday with all of our principals to reemphasize to them their commitment to their campus emergency plans and maintaining a safe school environment to the extent possible. Safety of our students, staff, and visitors at our district facilities is always of paramount importance. And by no means are we saying that we have everything covered. We know that we still have a lot of work to do. And that's the whole point of ongoing reviews of our emergency operation plans for a multi-hazard incident. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Ms. Lozano, any question?
I just have a couple comments. I don't think it's really that important to look back at what may have been done or what may not have been done. I think it's imperative that moving forward, we have a consistent plan, one that is not set aside because we're busy focusing on academics or tests or anything like that. We cannot lose sight of how important this is.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Mesa?
Mr. Salinas, in other districts, they have audits that are done by the Region Center, and they're done periodically. And, they contract with the Region Center, and then they send out a consultant that goes and makes sure that, for example, the doors are locked, that perhaps there might be a faulty door that, for whatever reason, it might be under repair, that cannot be locked if there's a lockdown, for example, in the hallway.
Yes, sir.
Are those audits being done internally, or are we?
They're being done internally, yes, sir. The Texas Safety Center also will conduct audits at our request. That's the safety center that was created under the governor's division to assist all school districts and universities across Texas with security measures. The requirement is to have those security audits conducted as a minimum every 3 years. It's a lengthy process with a lot of questions that are asked in order for us to be self-reflective on what we're doing or not doing, and then take corrective action from there. I think we need to do a better job at that and actually contract someone to come out. The service from the Texas Safety Center is free, and that's something that we will be looking at. Again, as a proactive measure to make sure that we're doing everything possible in order to maintain a safe environment.
Then another question, and I know that gradually we're building some of the newer facilities, but in some of the older campuses, we just added, portable buildings, and for some reason, they were not either tied to the intercom system or to the emergency drills that were conducted in different campuses. Is that because I know that it was being addressed several years ago. Where are we with that?
Well, if we don't have all of our buildings tied into the intercom system, I'm not aware of it, because they all have to be. Because as a bare minimum, the fire department requests that if we're gonna do a fire drill, that the intercom system has to work. Because in some of our older campuses, not so much now, but I'm talking 3-4 years ago, when we were at, for example, Old North Heights, that's all they had was the intercom system, and that sufficed at that time in order to call a fire drill. There were no bells and whistles over there because it's a 100-year-old campus. So the intercom system has to work at all of the campuses, either through the IP phone system or through a traditional type of intercom system. If there is a problem with it, obviously we need to fix it ASAP. It shouldn't be lingering for a year or two or what have you. And I know that right now, the only campus that I'm aware of that's having an intercom issue was the New North Heights, because at that school, we did not install a traditional intercom system. The request came in to go with an updated type of technology system. It's called IP over the phone, and that's how they do the call out, because every classroom has a phone, and so in essence you have a built-in intercom in the phone system. The other advantage, supposedly back at that time when this was under review, was that you can make that call from central office because it's tied into our network system. And it is failing in many respects, and so we've been trying to patch it back together, get it up and running ASAP, and we are now in the process. We've already started that. It's been going at least 2+ weeks where we're installing a traditional intercom system throughout the whole campus.
Then perhaps I need to rephrase my question, because I know there were several issues. So that being one, because for example, Calderon, we added several portables not too long ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes.
And in some of the schools, when they actually had a fire and they had a fire drill, it was not automatically going to the fire station, for example.
Yes, that's correct.
And do we still have some of those systems, the older systems that are not tied in?
Again, that was not a requirement to do the call out, and so that is under review by Chief Haynes and our vendor.
Okay.
To give us some information on that, and then cost on doing a complete upgrade. But you are correct, we still have several campuses that do not call out.
Okay, that's, as long as it's being addressed. I know that some of the older campuses, that's the way it was. It wasn't required.
Right.
But I think, every minute counts, if we have an actual fire that, we have the proper people to
respond.
the firemen to respond
Yes, sir.
immediately. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Chavita has a question, comment?
Mr. Salinas, last year, a couple of years ago, I don't remember exactly, we met with Chief, myself, Fire Marshal, you, and Dr. Cooper at the time. And we had quite a few alarm systems that were not working, or according to him, and different apparatus. Have we fixed all that?
Some have been addressed and some are still ongoing.
I think it ought to be done as soon as possible. And I think, like I said, it's been 2 years now,
Yes, sir.
and we just can't let it linger any longer, but it needs to be done. And also, you were saying that our fire drills, et cetera, we're not doing them. I remember way back, some years back, at least 15 years ago, every time there was a fire drill, we had to send a report, put a date, and I think we ought to go back to it because it's important. That way we know that it's been done, you know that it's been done, that way we'll have we check ourselves as to whether we're doing it or not.
We already currently have that in place. The documentation process is in place.
Great.
Unfortunately, that's how we're finding out that some of it is not consistent. But we do have the process in place for our campuses to report their fire drills and then to report the other drills that are supposed to be conducted throughout the year.
And let me add another thing to it, is that I'm talking about 98, when we've been very fortunate that we have never had a lot of emergencies such as we had at that time. And I was very much impressed with our DPS department, our city police, everybody. And I remember because Sheriff Martinez is out there, it's amazing the working that was done when that emergency occurred at the time. And I think Sheriff Martinez spent 24 hours a day, maybe 27, for about a week trying to find everybody that was missing or thought that they were missing, that type of thing. But anyway, I was very much impressed. So I know that what you presented out there, it works.
Yes, sir.
And if some of you have not been part of it, you ought to see it. Maybe one next time you have a practice or something like that, invite us so we can be there and we can see the actual work that is being done and the communication that occurs and all that type of thing, working together. So I know it's a very workable system, so we congratulate you.
We can't do emergency planning without our law enforcement partners, the fire department and EMS, health professionals. Throughout our meetings for the last 5+ years, we've shared a lot of information with them, and so we continue to improve on that in a collaborative manner.
And let me just finish by saying that you've done an excellent job. You give us a lot of information. I thank you for it.
Thank you, sir.
When could we expect a follow-up of some sort? Is like what Mr. Chavita is saying, progress on certain of these pending items. When could we see something?
Chief Haynes.
What part are you talking about?
Well, similar like what Mr. Chavita is talking about, the need for a follow-up where we are on some of these upgrades and things that he's mentioned.
On the fire alarms and stuff like that. Anytime you want to talk to me, I don't have a problem.
We'll put together a report, Mr. Garabedian.
Did you have a question, Ms. Lozano?
I just wanted to follow up on something that Mr. Chavita had said. About 2 years ago, there was an incident at the freshman campus. And at that time, again, there was a heightened awareness to shooter. So that we don't lose sight of this. I know it's not, it's under information only. I'm going to ask Dr. Ackerman to keep this in our view, maybe on a quarterly basis, to give us an update. I know there was an audit conducted around that same time, and there were a lot of these issues about the fire alarms and things like that, that was 2 years ago. We still haven't had that addressed. So that we don't lose sight of it, let's keep it at the forefront. It is too important to let it go to the wayside.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Mesa?
I just want to also praise Sheriff Martinez. I believe 2 years ago, you had a consultant, and I believe you paid out of your budget. Because I know I heard from teachers, great review. First name was Phil, and I think he wrote a book, When Teens Kill. That was so important for the staff to be able to understand, and to work in crisis situations. And I think that was awesome. And I believe that's 2 or 3 years ago. Was that
Yes, it was.
two years ago?
Beginning of school for staff development.
And I believe that was costly, but I think it's something that still teachers to this day remember, that it was very crucial for them to be able to understand and to remain calm, when there's a crisis. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that we appreciate that. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Lozano?
Well, I had wanted to say that I know that Sheriff Martinez had gone out and worked with Comstock on reviewing and providing advice and recommendations on their emergency plan.
Yes.
And I'm sure, right, Joe Frank, that he would be willing to work with the district as well.
We
Thank you.
tried to schedule that already, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen, but we've had that communication before.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
Other comments? Dr. Ackerman?
I'd like to say something. As a result of the meeting that we had with the principals yesterday, they have asked for assistance in, more assistance in what they have at this point. And so I have talked with Mr. Salinas that this is something that we're going to put priority on. And we will also seek assistance in not only making sure that they do their drills other than fire drills, but to also invite people out to make sure that they're doing them correctly and provide them feedback. Because no matter how many times you practice, if it's not correctly done. So I've already started that conversation, and we are going to continue with it, and the principals want that.
Thank you, Dr. Ackerman.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Thank you, Chief Haynes, for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sheriff Martinez, for being in attendance. That brings us to information item E, information on participation rebate check with the TASB TML TASA Buy Board Cooperative Purchasing. Paul Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian and Dr. Ackerman and board members. I'm so pleased to announce that the San Felipe Del Rio CISD received a rebate check from TASB Buy Board, one of the interlocals that we participate in. The rebate was in the amount of $3,070.47, and that's been deposited to our miscellaneous accounts. And I just wanted to let y'all know that because of our participation, that we have received that amount of money. Thank you.
Good. Pretty good. Questions?
That's a positive.
Yes, nice to hear it. Right? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Information item F, information report on notice of grant awards for Student Success Initiative, Dr. Garza and Patty Brown presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, board members, Dr. Ackerman. The district received the NOGA, the Notice of Grant Award for the Student Success Initiative grant, and we were awarded $49,201. This grant's only to be used for immediate intervention for struggling students in any of the core areas. We're going to divide the funds between the campuses, and they're going to be used only for tutorials. We set aside about $42,000 for teacher extra duty pay, so teachers can be paid to do after school, before school or Saturday camps, and around $6,000 for resource material for these tutorials. So it's not a whole lot, but it's definitely better than nothing. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Information item G, information on notice of grant awards for the Special Education Idea B Formula in Preschool 2011-12 Roll Forward. Presenter, Dr. Deanna Aguirre.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and members of the board. We did receive a notice of grant award on December the 10th for our Idea B formula funds and for our Idea B preschool. We received $493,598 for Idea B formula and $29,979 in Idea B preschool. Are there any questions or?
Questions? Comments?
Was this a decrease or an increase from last year, Dr. Aguirre? Do you recall?
This is a slight decrease. On our roll forward, it's a slight decrease, but I think we're seeing that coming up.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to information item H, which is attendance rates to date by school. Mr. Reno Luna presenting.
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable board members, Dr. Ackerman. My name is Rene Luna. I'm the MIS Director, and tonight I present to you some data in regards to enrollment and average daily attendance. As of December 7th, 2012, The enrollment for the school district was 10,454. Average daily attendance, a cumulative total. We have those numbers broken down in your packet, but we also have, and we have the wrong one up here. We have the numbers broken down like we usually do. For the month of November, we have Del Rio High School, 95.28. Year-to-date, 95.9. Del Rio Freshman School, 96.18. Year-to-date, 96.7. Del Rio Middle School, 96.39. Year-to-date, 96.09. Garfield Elementary, 96.05. Year-to-date, 97.51. North Heights Elementary, 97.27. Year-to-date, 97.78. San Felipe Memorial, 96.21. Year-to-date, 97.42. Lamar Elementary, 97.99. Year-to-date, 98.47. Cardwell, 93.52. Year-to-date, 95.91. Buena Vista, 97.61. Year-to-date, 98.21. Chavita Elementary, 97.25. Year-to-date, 97.84. Calderon Elementary, 97.3. Year-to-date, 97.83. Lonnie Green, 96.72. Year-to-date, 97.61. And as we do every month, we have a breakdown in regards to ranking. For elementary, first place Lamar, 97.99. Buena Vista, second place, 97.61. Dr. Fermin Calderon, third place, 97.88. North Heights Elementary, 97.27. Fifth place, Ruben Chavita Elementary, 97.25. Dr. Lonnie Green, place 6, 96.72. Garfield, 7th place, 96.5. Irene Cardwell, 93.52. For secondary, first place this month, Del Rio Middle School, 96.39. San Felipe Memorial, second place, 96.21. Del Rio Freshman, 96.18. And Del Rio High School, 95.28. And this data is online on the MIS webpage, as always.
Ms. Lozano has questions, comments?
I just noticed that there are at least one full percentage point on Darrell Middle School, on Garfield, on San Felipe Memorial Middle School.
They're all down.
They're all down, but a full percentage point. Are there any trends noted?
Well, we had
In those
one week that did not count. We had a Thanksgiving week. So we're not averaging by the full 28, 25 days. We're averaging by a smaller amount of days because we're, on this one here, we're just doing, what you're looking at is November 1st through the end of November.
Right.
When you do the average daily attendance for the month, you have less days to get a percentage. If they would have had that full week, they could have gone up a full percentage point. And that's where the year-to-date comes to more importance. The year-to-date is the number of days compared to the number of attendance within those days. So in this case, the month of November, it's more important to look at the year-to-date. And that will also affect December, when we have the 2-week period going into January.
The same trend was not noted last year in November, and we still had a week off for Thanksgiving, I believe, right? It's just interesting to maybe note any trends at those campuses.
Mr. Overfeld?
Can I, since we have the principals here, can I ask, say, Garfield, since they're down a percentage, maybe she has? Ms. Diaz has a,
Are they not coming back after Thanksgiving break, or?
Ms. Diaz?
Ms. Diaz, would you approach the podium, please?
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian and members of the board. I'm actually glad that y'all asked me up here. We are seeing a declining trend in our attendance at Garfield, and we feel that that trend has to do with the students who are enrolling from Mexico. We have had a large number of students who are crossing back and forth every day. If you look at our days of poor attendance, it's Mondays and Fridays. It's kids going home on the weekend, not coming back till Monday. We've done lots of home visits. We're finding lots of students that don't reside in Del Rio, but they enroll in our school districts because they're U.S. citizens living in Mexico, and that is having a very large impact on our students at Garfield. And like I said, it is something that we're addressing with home visits, and we're working with Pupil Services and Ana Leiva's office on identifying these students who don't live in Del Rio daily. And so, like I said, we're taking a big hit. We're taking a big hit with those students.
Any ideas for resolution besides the home visits? Obviously, it's not really working.
No, I know that, like I said, we're working with Ana Leiva as far as what's required when they register and proof of residence and, you know, those types of issues. But again, the number of students that we have coming every day back and forth it's affecting our attendance. And those are the students that, I mean, it's the same group of kids. It's not different kids that are missing here and there. It's the same population of students. It's really hurting our attendance. And I don't know if it's because we're the school closest to the border. I know that there's other campuses who, if we look at the kids that are consistently absent, it's kids who, again, they're U.S. citizens. So when they're enrolling, they have a right to a U.S. education, but there's the question of the proof of residency. Do they truly live, you know, here in Del Rio?
Other questions? Mr. Mesa has a question.
Well, I don't have a question for you, but I know I'm always looking at freshmen, you know, and I just wanted to compliment freshmen that they've had, even though some of the other campuses might be low at this point, I think they've made an effort to improve what was done last year, and so I just want to say thanks again for improving the attendance and keeping that consistent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding attendance? Mr. Luna, do you have anything else? Thank you. Information item I, discipline report to date by school, presenter, campus principals. The board should realize this is a different format than in the past. It's something the board has been looking to ask more specific questions, so this is kind of the first time out doing it this way, so kind of bear with administration, but I think this will be a more fruitful information item as we go forward. Dr. Garza?
Mr. President, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board, everything that I was going to say, you just said.
Great.
We are doing a little bit different. The way it's going to go is Mr. Perez is going to present for the high school, and the reason we're doing that is because Mr. Perez was in charge of that part at the high school, so we are asking him to do that. He also was very instrumental in helping all the other principals create the charts that we are about to show you. It's going to be a little bit different. When we first started with this and Mr. Perez showed them the charts, it was evident that there was some issues there that we needed to correct. So as we're seeing the charts, it's information for the principals to identify exactly what's going on, so we correct certain things. So what you're going to see is first the high school, and then he's also going to present for the elementary. It's going to be grouped together. We decided that we're not going to do the 7 campuses, so he's going to do all of them. He's going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, and then the other 3 secondary campuses will do their presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. I'm here today to report on disciplinary offenses and actions taken by administrators for all of the elementary campuses and Del Rio High School, like Dr. Garza said. And since I was at the high school for the month of November, I can answer some of the questions if you have them. Discipline reporting is not always easy. Too often we can get swamped down with paperwork and a lot of lengthy reports. So Dr. Ackerman and Dr. Garza felt that it was time we found a new way to present our data so that we could answer most of the questions that you might have. Through Skyward, the administrators were able to create charts and graphs to monitor discipline, plan for campus-wide rules and procedures, and target disciplinary concerns that otherwise may have gone unnoticed. These actions have been taken place, of course, since the beginning of the school year, but the information that I'm about to show you has created some consistency with illustrating it to you. And so here are some of the reports. I'm going to start off with high school. For the month of November, Del Rio High School had these discipline offenses. The breakdown is by offense type. Over to the left, we have one incident that occurred off campus that is coded 18, indecency with a child. As I read over to the right, we have 69 students that were coded with 21, which means there was some type of violation, code of conduct. 16 students were coded as 40, which is insubordination. And the last graph is 2 students involved in one fight. The discipline actions that were taken by administration regarding those offenses, over again to the left and to the right, we have 6 students that were suspended out of school. 7 students were placed in in-school suspension. 3 students were placed at the Alternative Education Program, Student Guidance and Learning Center. 23 students were placed in detention. 2 students were placed on a contract, a disciplinary contract, and 1 student received corrective counseling. And so the first report shows you what the students are doing on campus. The teacher refers them with a disciplinary referral, and this one shows you exactly what the administrator did. Any questions for high school?
I may have missed it, but did you tell them this is downloaded directly from the Skyward?
This is directly from Skyward. There is a person on the campus, whether it be the principal, the assistant principal, or a discipline clerk, that codes all of the referrals.
Ms. Lozano?
Is there a way, sir, to break those down even further? If you go back one slide to show, let's say I can't see the number on there, the tall column.
69.
Of those 69, what were the consequences for the 69? How many of those went to ISS? How many were sent to SGLC? How many were, is there a way to see that?
Yes, ma'am. Skyward actually is very user-friendly and provides us all of that information. In fact, speaking for the high school when I was there, we have a core crisis team that met monthly. For example, last year we met every month and looked at all of the patterns. If if the administrator wants to, they can click on any one of those graphs and an Excel spreadsheet comes out with all of the names of the students, their demographics, the actions that were taken, and it's a very, very useful tool. I love it, but for now we can show you this. Also, I do want to point out that I did click on the 69, looked at all of the students, and I believe we only had 1 repeat offender.
That's good.
Question of how many went?
one of the things that was very helpful when Mr. Bettis was doing this, we presented to the elementary principals, and when they clicked on that, they saw the names, and it was a highlight for them because they identified if there was any errors or not. Going back to what Mr. Bettis said, one benefit here is for the principals and assistant principals and everyone that's involved, when you see the names and they're recurring, those are the ones that we want to pull and talk to, just like you were saying, Mr. Chavita, last time. What are we doing? Do we know who these kids are and who is getting involved with these kids?
Thank you.
Any other questions for high school before I present the elementary findings? Okay, we move on to the elementary reports. Buena Vista Elementary did not have any disciplinary offenses to report for the month of November. Neither did they have disciplinary actions to report. Cardwell, the same. Dr. Fermin Calderon Elementary had, I believe that's 1, and it's coded 21, which means that that student violated some rule in the student code of conduct. Again, you can get all of the details by just clicking on that graph. The actions taken for that one student at Calderon Elementary was in-school suspension. And so, as we go along, you'll see that the offenses should match the actions taken. For Ruben Chavira Elementary, we had 8 students that were coded with an asterisk T, which means it was a teacher referral. We actually talked about this code and decided that we're not going to use it anymore because we want to be able to give you a little more detail as far as information. This just means that a teacher sent a student to the office. And so if we have to, we look at the paperwork on campus and we can identify why they were sent. We had 2 students involved in 1 fight. Those are the offenses. The actions were, well, we took action on the fight and those 2 students were suspended out of school. Again, if we click on that graph, it'll tell us whether they were suspended one day or 3 days. Garfield Elementary had 1 student coded as teacher referral and 10 conduct code 21. The actions taken by Garfield Elementary for the month of November include 1 out of school suspension, 1 parent conference, 5 corrective counseling, 1 individual corrective counseling, 1 lunch detention, and 1 parent conference. There is one thing that I would like to note that I have actually observed with Skyward. Even though you put 2 disciplinary actions, ISS for example, and parent conference, ISS takes precedence. So the parent conference doesn't show up on the graphs even though you did make the call or visit with the parent. Lamar Elementary had no disciplinary offenses or actions to report. Dr. Lonnie Green, the same. North Heights had 3 teacher referrals, 1 student coded as 21, broke some rule in the student code of conduct. Actions, 1 out of school suspension.
Ms. Lozano?
So what happened to the others? Nothing? They didn't talk to the parents, they didn't get counseled?
These students, this student that received the out of school suspension must have been involved in something a little more major than just a minor offense. The other 3, even though it wasn't coded, may have received corrective counseling or something like that. Now, we do have the principal from North Heights here, and she can maybe expand on what she does in those incidents if you like.
No, I don't think that's necessary. It's just, it appears just by looking at that, that they didn't follow through with that.
Well, and
Or
there,
just didn't code it. I'm sure they did it.
okay.
If I can answer.
One of the other things that we did find out is the coding. We are going back, I think January 10th, we are meeting with the elementary principal, all principals to make sure that we are coding this correctly, to make sure that whenever the action happens, they're also coding the actual consequence. Ms. Sutton wanted to say something, if you still want her to say something about that incident, or?
No, I mean, I think if there's training that's required and you already have that planned, I think that's great.
Region 15 is coming down.
Great.
There was one, I guess, observation that I also made, is that there's two options to enter the codes, like Dr. Garza said, a referral and an offense. And I believe one of you said that at the last board meeting. If you code it as a referral, sometimes the action won't come out on the graphs. The action is there, but the graph didn't show it for some reason. And so I think that's what they're talking about when Region 15 is going to come over and look at those glitches.
Great. Good, I'm glad.
Those are all the reports for elementary.
Questions? Ms. Lozano, did you have something to ask?
No, the middle
The
schools.
other 3 secondary campuses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much better.
I think so.
Yeah.
So they didn't have time to put those in here this time.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and members of the board. I'm here to present the offenses and actions for San Felipe Memorial. As you can see, for violation of the Student Code of Conduct, we had 10 students. We had 10 students for insubordination, which is Code 40. And then we had 3 fights, which is 6 students involved, which is Code 41. On the actions that were taken, we had 10 students who were coded as OSS, out of school suspension. We had 10 students that were in school suspension. We had 4 students that received partial day ISS, and then we had 3 students that received individual corrective counseling. Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments?
I think I have one.
Mr. Mesa?
Go ahead.
I hate to be so critical, but when there's a fighting, automatically it's out of school suspension, correct?
Well, it depends on every fight is different because it could be a fight, but one was the aggressor and the other one was maybe the one that was defending himself and tried to walk away. And so we can't just say a fight is a fight because one could have been the instigator.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Definitely. He does.
And I have broken every single one of them down, so I could tell you exactly what each one of them was if you needed to know.
Other questions?
It has to be hard.
Sometimes it's a little tiny kid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
Just defending.
thank you. As I said at the beginning, this is a new format, something we've been talking, it looks, I think generally the board is pleased with this
Very
approach.
nice.
Okay.
I just can't see.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. Del Rio Middle School, I'm going to go ahead and present our offenses for the month of November. We had 1 teacher referral. We had 4 controlled substances. We had 21 code of conduct, violation code of conduct. We had 89 insubordinations, and we had 6 students involved in a fight, which was a total of 3 fights. Our actions were 12 students were OSS, or out of school suspension. We had 10 students placed in school suspension. We had 2 students placed at the alternative education AEP program. We had 50 students in detention. We had 1 student placed on a contract, and we had 44 corrective counseling.
None of those are repeaters in any of the graphs that you're seeing. Not one was a repeater. One thing that we have increased are the corrective counseling. You can almost see the correlation. Almost every single incident that happens does get some kind of corrective counseling.
Any questions?
Mr. Missa?
Sorry to be asking questions that are critical, but when you have a controlled substance, depending on what it is, now, if it's drugs related, for example, there's one, I mean, you only have one action.
Yes, sir.
And that's to, you expel.
We suspend for 3 days pending the level 1, and then Ms. Leyva comes in and performs the level
Okay.
1. Yes, sir.
All right, so that will come up later on, more than like next month or so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. As you can see, at the freshman campus, we had 45 violations for student code of conduct. 9 of those happened at the SGLC Center. So we had, 36? And then 11 were for insubordination. Those were the offenses, and for actions that we're taking for those violations, we had 5 out-of-school suspension, 3 in-school suspension. This one right here that you see placed off of AEP, at the SGLC Center, that one is one of the glitches that we're trying to find out, that we're having a region come in and train us, because that incident happened in September. We coded it, but for some reason, Pupil Services coded in November that they went to SGLC, so that's why it's showing now. So I don't want you to think that we sent somebody to SGLC because code of conduct violation or insubordination. That's something that happened in September, and it had to do with drugs. Right. We had 25 detention, students that were sent to detention, 9 corrective counseling, what is that? 4 part day of OSS, 1 equipment that was confiscated, and then 9 individual verbal reprimand. So those are the actions that happen here. Is there any questions or comments?
No comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on. I've said it before, I think this is a better format. I will be just a little bit picky. It's maybe more me. It's a little hard to see on the screen. I don't know if.
They will be able to print them next
Okay.
month, this month.
Okay.
They were still working
Okay.
fast like us.
Fine. Yeah, well, especially I have trouble. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, information item J, presentation of campus highlights. Dr. Jorge Garza presenting.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board, we go from discipline to highlights. In your packet, there is highlights that we sent to you. There are a lot more than what I'm going to present here. I did not want to stand up here for 30 minutes, so that's the reason we're going to present the most important ones. There's a lot of great things that are happening on our campus, but that was the intent. So we'll start with Buena Vista, home of the Longhorns. One thing that happened in Buena Vista, they earned 5 of the 7 trophies that were given at the elementary cross-country meet. First place, 3rd grade girls. First place, 4th grade girls. First place, 5th grade girls. And first place, 3rd grade boys. And highest participation for largest school. As you saw earlier, robotics competition, 3rd place, and sportsmanship award. And of course, you already saw, they were the UIL district champions. Dr. Fermin Calderon Elementary. Once again, you already saw robotics competition, first and second place. Student council and staff students collected enough food items to give to 30 needy families for Thanksgiving. Recycling, Green Days, November 9th and December 21st, campus-wide trash pickup. What I forgot to mention is, if you have any questions for the principals on these highlights or the highlights that you see in your packet, please feel free to ask them. Any questions? Ruben Chavira Elementary. They had a mock presidential election. Students voted for the president. And I will ask a question. Who won? Where's Chavira Elementary? Oh, Miss Sandra's not here. Well, never mind. Scrimmage robotics meet. 3 teams, 22 students competed. And GT field trip, students learn about City Hall, the Firehouse, Compass Bank, and Valverde Regional Medical Center. Lamar Elementary, best attendance in the district for the first 6 weeks, best attendance in the district for the second 6 weeks. First place, school with the most participation in annual cross-country meet. And Student Council Thanksgiving Food Drive donated 20 turkeys and food baskets to local families. Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, participation in 3 robotics competitions, participation in the 11th annual elementary cross-country meet, 5th grade boys team champions, and 3rd place winners at the Andale del Rio Celebrity Fitness Challenge. North Heights Elementary, North Heights Student Council campus-wide Christmas caroling on December 20th. Region 15, first ever Lone Star Math Cup champions, 5th grade Mrs. Musquiz Ortiz class, Think Through Math presentation of banner. And North High Student Council is hosting the toy drive to be delivered to Valverde Sheriff's Department for deserving students. Del Rio Middle School, I asked all the schools to give us 3 items, and she did give me 3 items, but they're humongous 3 items. That's right. That's good. Actually, they had something tonight. Parent meetings continue 3 to 4 per month. Our next parent meeting will be today at Cienegas Terrace Community Center on Wednesday, December 19th at 5:30. Detective Sergio Mendoza will present and will play loteria and have snacks available for those in attendance. This is very, very exciting because she's doing community presentations. And of course, something else that's very excited is the Kino update. Search engine Destiny Library Manager was installed in all Kunos. This is used for all research categories using all resources that any secondary library has available. Renaissance Place Accelerated Reader has been installed in all Kunos. Students are able to test comprehension after reading any library book. Follett Shelf has been installed. This gives students access to all library books at any time. That is fantastic. Links install, Study Island, and Right to Learn. Tuner application has been downloaded for all band students. Allows students to tune their instruments as instructed by band directors. And Curriculum Cloud now holds social studies and ELA textbooks. And this is also something very exciting, college trips. They took 1 trip to Texas State University, 2 trips to UTSA, 1 trip to Texas A&M International University in Laredo. 512 students have attended. We will start up again in January when the universities resume classes. Any questions there?
Mr. Orfeld has a comment.
I'm going to go back to the Kunos.
Don't ask me that, Mr. Orfeld. How do I do that? Hold on.
There we go. How are everybody adapting to the Kunos? Have we bought in over there? Everybody's all yay for it? All the teachers? All the...
actually,
students?
a team came, last week, a team of 5, and they actually touched every single Kuno. And, we found some screens that were broken, things like that, so all of that's being shipped out during the holidays for warranty to be, for them to come back. But, the coolest feature that we're just implementing this week is the part where the teachers will actually have access to downloading the worksheet, the test, whatever the assignment is. It comes back graded, and Mr. Casillas is telling me that we will have access to, once those grades are in the teacher's tablet, they will download to our grade speed. Wow is right. Wow is like, so have my teachers are excited. Yes. You're looking at 150, papers per teacher, and imagine all that grading. It's taken a while, 5 months for the company to get it, but we just got that. So yes, sir, we're kind of rejuvenated again.
And when they download, it says access to all the library books at any time, so they can go in, download it onto the Kuno,
Yes.
and then if they don't have
And they can
Wi-Fi at
read it.
home, they're still able to open it. Like if I downloaded it onto my.
No.
No.
No, they would have to have Wi-Fi for that to work. That would be
Still
too
cool, though.
many for us to put. It would just take up all the capacity. The neat thing, though, is any book at 6th grade, 9th grade, and high school we have access to. Any secondary library, and that gives us, a whole world. That research engine, that's the search engine, that is probably the biggest thing right now in our EOC classrooms. They are going to town on that because that's what they can search anything.
The world is at their fingertips, that's amazing.
It's crazy. And then the right to learn, the study island, we no longer have to make time to go to the computer labs. Teachers can just do it in their
Right there with the tablets.
at home. We're getting those reports.
Very cool.
That's an exciting part.
I had a question for,
Mr. Mesa.
I just had a question. Are you able to generate reports on, let's say, Study Island?
Yes, sir.
So you're able to give some
Yes, actually, we get
feedback?
weekly reports on Study Island. And then the right to learn also, they tell us how many students have signed up, how many have used it by teacher, how many times we've activated it. Today we got a new one, and I'm trying to think of what the name of it was. Oh, Think Through Math, that North Heights won that award on, that has been put into our tablets. That's brand new, and that just went in today.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Del Rio Freshman School. Every student is recognized on their birthday with a coupon for a choice of an ice cream and D-Hall pass by the principal. This is very exciting for the students. I used to do this myself, and it would give me an opportunity to actually do a walkthrough while I would say happy birthday to the students. So they're doing that at the freshman campus. Several students in Mrs. Calvetti's art class have been working very hard to create 2 murals for the Cradles classrooms. The students are Alana Lara, Nancy Santillan, Mario Hernandez, Cesar Esquivel, Marco Ariola, and Pablo Garcia. Mrs. Calvetti has also been helping to supervise the students. This is also something very exciting. I don't know if Mr. Martinez is still here, but Sheriff Martinez is still here. But this is something that's very beneficial for our freshman kids. State and local federal law enforcement agents made a presentation to all the real freshman students. The presentation is titled Operation Detour. The board, way back then, about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, approved it to present it to all incoming high school students. And it brings awareness to all our students about the danger of drug trafficking. And as an experience at the high school, I noticed that a lot of our students, before we had this, were being caught for the mules that they call. But after we did this, the numbers dwindled, and it's been very beneficial. Freshman FCCLA chapter hosted a toy drive for local children's shelter. And the Real High School, senior trips to UTSA and Texas State. A total of 80 students attended, and counselor continues to assist seniors with college application scholarships, SAT and ACT given this month. Upgrade and credit recovery labs open from 7 to 8 and 3:45 to 6 p.m. Tuesday through Thursday. And let me tell you a little bit about this. What they do is if a student fails for the 6 weeks, they go into that lab and they have an opportunity to get their credit for that 6 weeks. The Student Council continues to promote school pride with student groups Christmas tree, toy drive, Santa Hat Day for all Del Rio High School, and ugly Christmas sweater contest for staff on 12/21. UIL team continues to excel. This is also something very exciting. They have a great team in UIL academics. They placed second place in sweepstakes at Madison High School. Clark, Jay, Marshall, all kinds of big schools were there, and they placed second. And there is you. Thank you for all the continued support. And like Dr. Ackerman tells us, we are a team and we are going for excellence.
Good.
Thank you.
Great work.
Yes,
Thanks to all of you.
very nice. And this is also a little different format, but I think it's better. I like it.
It's nice, condensed and concise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garza. Okay, that brings us to information item K, Board Member Continuing Education Report, which I'm presenting. This may take a few minutes. This is a requirement as per policy and State Board of Education and law. At the last regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, the requirement is that the compliance with the required continuing education requirements for school board members are reviewed and called out. So what I'll do is first I'll explain the 3 tiers. I think most of you are familiar with it. 3 are probably a little new to what I mean when I say tiers, what those tiers are, and the status of everyone. Tier 1 requirements for first-year board members or local district orientation. That's not something that's required for experienced board members. Tier 1 also includes an orientation to the Texas Education Code. And then Tier 2 is a team building session, assessment of continuing education needs. Tier 3 are additional continuing education based on assessed needs and the framework for governance leadership. A lot of paper, so just kind of bear with me. We'll start to my far right with Dr. Keys. He is an experienced board member, so in the case of Tier 1, that's not applicable, so he is compliant in Tier 1. In the case of Tier 2, which again is the team building session, a review of the paperwork, he is compliant in Tier 2 from workshops this summer and an earlier one this year. In Tier 3, which is the additional continuing education, he is compliant as an experienced board member. It's at least 5 hours each year, and he has far exceeded that. Next is Ms. Haynes. And as everyone knows, she's a new board member, so the requirements are a little bit different. Tier 1 for her includes the local district orientation. She is compliant in Tier 1. The local district orientation was conducted in August of this year. Tier 2, which is the leadership team services or team building. Also, she is compliant in that in the required amount of hours that took place in July of this year. Tier 3, which is a continuing education, and for a new board member, it's at least 10 hours, and she is compliant, and she exceeds the number of hours. Brings us to Mr. Overfelt. Again, a new board member, so his Tier 1 requirements are the local district orientation, which he did complete. He's compliant in that, the same workshop that took place in July of this year. Tier 2, which is the team building aspect, that also he's compliant from the workshop held in July of this year. Tier 3, which again is continuing education. He is a new board member required for at least 10 hours. He's compliant, and he also has exceeded that number. And I failed to mention, when I say exceeded, the continuing education, there were TASB and TASA workshops in June and September that the 3 board members I've just mentioned attended. That brings us to myself, Charles Garabedian, and I am a new board member, so my requirements are similar to Ms. Haynes and Mr. Overfelt. The Tier 1, which is a local district orientation, and I did complete that with the others in August of this year. So on Tier 1, I'm compliant. The Tier 2 requirements, the leadership, the team building workshops, again compliant from the workshop of July of this year. Tier 3, again as a new board member, at least 10 hours, and I am compliant in that, having exceeded the amount of hours from the TASA and the TASA-TASB conferences of June and September of this year. Now to my left, this is Martinez Lozano. A review again of the paperwork, her Tier 1 requirements, not applicable, so she is compliant. Tier 2, which is the team building aspect, and she did attend the workshop held in March of this year, so she is compliant in that. The Tier 3 is the continuing education, again, attendance at conferences in June and September. She's compliant and exceeded those requirements as a experienced board member. I almost said old board member. As an experienced board member, again, her requirements 5 years, and she does exceed that in Tier 3. And now to Mr. Mesa. Tier 1, again, he's an experienced board member, so he's compliant, most of that not applicable. Tier 2, which is the team building, he was in attendance for the workshop in July. He also has done others early in the year, so he's compliant in those hours, exceeding them. And in Tier 3, which is continuing education, again, compliant from June and September, and from review of the records earlier conferences, so he's compliant and having also exceeded, as have some of the others, on the Tier 3 requirements. And finally, that brings us to Mr. Chavita, also an experienced board member, Tier 1, most of that not applicable, so he is compliant based upon the review. Tier 2, which is the team building, he was in attendance in July, and that's more than enough hours. He's compliant in Tier 2. And in Tier 3, which is a continuing education, he needs at least, as an experienced board member, at least 5 hours. He has exceeded that, so he's compliant from various workshops, conferences rather, February, May, June, and September of this year. So based on my review of the TASB guidelines, the applicable law, talking to someone at TASB, talking to legal counsel, review of all the paperwork, I do find that all of the board is compliant in their training requirements for this year. And I'd also like to say thank you and commend the board. I think we all know that leadership and learning are certainly tied together, so it's an important endeavor that they do that, and we'll keep an eye on what's needed and what's necessary for training moving forward. So if there's no questions, we'll move on. And that, of course, will be in the minutes in the future, and that will be documented as it should be. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 6, which is consent A. And under consent A is a consideration to approve minutes of the following meetings: November 13th, 2012, the special called board meeting, 26th of November, 2012, regular school board meeting, December 5th, 2012, special called board meeting. So under consent A, does any board member wish to pull any item from consent agenda A for discussion? No. Is there a motion to approve the items on consent agenda A? Mr. Overfeld has motion, Mr. Mesa has second. By a show of hands, all in favor? It's unanimous, motion carries. That brings us to number 7, which is consent B. Does any board member wish to pull any items from the consent agenda B for discussion? No? Is there a motion to approve the items under consent agenda B? Mr. Chavita has motioned to, Mr. Overfeld has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. As is the custom, before we move on to the discussion action items under consent B or the donations, customarily they are read and recognized. It is a rather long list, so if you will bear with me on that, I will do this before we move on. There was a donation from Christy Hill in the amount of $120 to Lamar Elementary. A donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,619.16 to Irene C. Cardwell Elementary. There was a donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,155.30 donated to Dr. Fermin Calderon Elementary. There was a donation from Rams Basketball Boosters in the amount of $1,046 donated to Del Rio High School Rams Boys Basketball. A donation from Exposure Marketing and Promotion in the amount of $8,000 to Del Rio High School Rams, Queens Tennis, Volleyball, Rams, Queens Basketball, Queens Softball, Rams, Queens Cross Country, and Ram Queens Soccer, being those that received the donation. There's a donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,138.13 donated to Del Rio Middle School. A donation from Pro Color Studio, James Cox, in the amount of $1,323 donated to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. It's a donation from Target in the amount of $27.23 donated to North Heights Elementary. A donation from McDonald's in the amount of $900 donated to North Heights Elementary. A donation from Pro Color Studio, James Cox, in the amount of $1,350 donated to North Heights Elementary. Another donation from McDonald's in the amount of $700 donated to Garfield Elementary. A donation from Pro Color Studios, James Cox again, for $1,160 donated to Garfield Elementary. A donation from Life Touch in the amount of $642.82 donated to Del Rio Middle School. Donation from Payless Beverage in the amount of $50 to Del Rio High School Choir. Donation from Gypsy Motorcycle Club in the amount of $50 to Del Rio High School Choir. Donation from Rams Basketball Boosters in the amount of $350 to Del Rio High School Rams Boys Basketball. And donation from Cynthia Salas in the amount of $27 to Buena Vista Elementary Music. And then non-monetary donations from Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary PTO, donating UIL t-shirts valued at $325 to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary UIL. Non-monetary donation from Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary PTO for physical education equipment valued at $400 donated to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. Donation, non-monetary donation from Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary PTO, a 5-year movie license valued at $1,200 donated to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. Non-monetary donation from the Geo Group Incorporated. The donation was 23 jackets valued at $300 donated to Irene C. Cardwell Elementary. Non-monetary donation from Texas Style Plumbing. It was 20 jackets valued at $200 to Irene C. Cardwell Elementary. And a non-monetary donation from Time Warner Cable, which was 7 Lego NXT Mindstorm robotic kits, 4 trophies, and 24 pizzas, valued at $2,271.03, and that was donated to the CTE Robotics Program 4th and 5th grade. Finally, a non-monetary donation from Precision Pipeline. They donated welding rods valued at $4,969.05, and those were donated to Del Rio High School welding classes. So on behalf of the district and the Board of Trustees,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I'd like to address a correction on item EE. On item EE, the amount of the PO over 25,000 is for 101,935 with 75 cents. The memo on page 113 does have the correct amount.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. As I was about to say, on behalf of the district and Board of Trustees, we thank all of our donors for their support of the district. Certainly it is greatly appreciated. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 8. It's approximately 7:50 p.m. And agenda item 8 are the discussion action items. The first one being discussion action item A, consideration to approve audit report for 2011-12 fiscal year. Presenter, Ms. Yanakani Valdez.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and board members. The 2011-2012 audit was performed by Leal and Carter. Mr. Robert Carter Jr. and Robert Carter Sr. are here to present the audit and answer any questions that the board may have. Once they have completed the presentation, I'll take the board through the financial highlights.
Good evening. I'm here to report on the audit we performed for the fiscal year ended August 31, 2012. This audit was done in accordance with auditing standards that are prescribed here in the U.S. and also in accordance with auditing standards for local governments receiving federal awards. So there are two sets of auditing standards that you are subjected to, and we will indicate that this audit was performed in accordance with those standards. The audit itself is our report that's on the front page of the packet, and the packet includes the general purpose financial statements, which is on the very top, our opinion on those financial statements, the notes, disclosure notes that explain to the reader how these financial statements were put together and the accounting principles upon which they are based. Then there's supplementary information, which is a series of various schedules that are required by TEA, and those are also subject to the audit, and those were covered by our audit opinion. And then there's an opinion on, a separate opinion on your compliance with the terms and conditions of the federal awards that you were presented. In accordance with governmental auditing standards, we have to go ahead and take a sample of your disbursements and activities that you do in those federal awards and determine if you have complied with the terms and conditions, and we prepare a report based upon that. In addition to that, we have a small report called a Report on Conduct of the Audit, and this is primarily a narrative format, just to give the board an overview of how the audit went, and it highlights whether we had any significant problems as far as the conduct of the audit, whether there was any disagreements between us and the school district as far as how certain key items should be reported on your books of account, whether we had to consult with any other specialists for any specific issues that arose, and any other items that we encountered, and that's set forth in our report of conduct of the audit. And then again, so I'm going to go ahead and briefly present and go over the highlights on the report on the conduct of the audit before we go into the audit itself. Now, the audit itself is quite voluminous, and we're just going to indicate, of course, our opinion that we indicate as far as a result of the audit on those financial statements. On the highlights of the report on the conduct of the audit, which is that small report that you have, we just, again, wanted to stress that this audit was made in accordance with audit standards, U.S. government auditing standards, as far as for local governments receiving federal awards. Our scope of the audit is set forth on item number 2. We also briefly described any significant accounting policies, and those significant accounting policies are those that are normally followed by a school district and by a local government as prescribed under applicable government auditing standards. We also indicate that there are some judgments and estimates that are made as a normal basis, like for your depreciation lives and these other items, and those judgments and estimates are made in accordance with prescribed procedures, and we found no problems there. We also touch on if there were any significant audit adjustments that were necessary as a result of our audit. We found we did not propose any significant audit adjustments. However, there was some adjustments made to your equity accounts to address, in part, an item we noted last year, and then also to address accounting for receipts that you get on a one-time basis based upon a study that's conducted by the State Comptroller's Office. That study is, what it does is that under state law, they will make an evaluation of your property values and take that into consideration as far as the state funding formula. And if they find that you are due additional amounts, then those amounts are paid to the school district. And those amounts were paid to the school district, but they were treated almost like a suspense item until a final review is done. So those, we believe, the school should pick that up as an in-kind item, so that increased your fund balance. The majority part of that is $3.8 million. Now, this is a one-time amount that won't happen, every year. This was a study conducted by the State Comptroller's Office of the local property values at that time. There may be some other studies in the future, and those studies may not result in the same type of increased funding that you get. So I just wanted to put that caveat up there. The adjustments and the supporting documentation that supported these adjustments were reviewed by us, and we're in agreement with them. And as a result of these, there was no qualifications to your financial statements. And I wanted to indicate that as I go into the actual audit report itself. Our audit report is submitted on pages 2 and 3. That's a pretty much standardized report, again indicating the scope of our audit and the auditing standards that were followed. And our opinion is indicated on the 3rd paragraph, and that, in our opinion, these financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with prescribed accounting and reporting procedures. There's also some additional paragraphs on page 3 that address the supplemental schedules that you are required to include with your financial statements to the Texas Education Agency, and we want to indicate as far as those supplemental schedules, when compared to your financial statements as a whole, they're also fairly presented. As part of your financial statements, there's what they call a management discussion and analysis. This is required to be presented by all local governments, and that's the school district itself giving overview, bird's eye, and narrative format to the reader to put the financial statements in a proper context. And that is an item that the school itself may address after we conclude our presentation. The actual financial statements start on page number 13, and I'll have my son just go over the highlights on it as far as what your financial condition is. And again, I want to thank the school and its staff for working with us, providing us all that we asked for. All documentation we asked for, they gave it to us. Everything was provided to us on a timely basis. All the additional work and analysis they did to make sure that that additional funding was picked up correctly, we reviewed, and we want to thank them for all that additional time and effort they did. And I will go ahead and have them just briefly present some of the highlights of your overall balance sheet and income statements. Thank you.
On page 13 is your what they consider your government-wide balance sheet. That includes all your assets. You can see there you have total assets of 147 million, which consists of fixed assets, and the majority of that is in your the current assets are in your cash there, 59 million. On your liabilities, you had 59.5 million, and the majority of that is related to your debt. And then your net equity, the result of applying your assets to your liabilities, is 87.5 million. On page 14 is your government-wide income statement, and you can see there again this is presented in accordance with GASB 34, and this is a prescribed format that all local governments have to adhere to. The first column there, the expense column, is the total government-wide expenses for 2012, and that's 88.5 million. You had program revenues attributable to charges for services of 1.3 million, and program revenues attributable to operating grants and contributions of 22.9 million. On the last column, what you have there is the net of the program revenues against the expenses, and you can see there is a deficit number, and there's always going to be a deficit number there until you apply your foundation money and your property tax money, which is what's considered to be general revenues. And so you had total general revenues of 70 million, which there you can see majority of that is 54 million from your foundation monies and around 15 million from property taxes and current and delinquent taxes. So the net result from your applying your expenses and your revenues is what they call the change in net assets, and that number is 5.8 million. You apply that to your beginning equity of 78.5 million. That brings you down to the 87.5. Well, you include that adjustment, the net effect of those prior year's adjustments of 3.2 million. That comes down to 87.5 million in equity, which is what we reported on your balance sheet. Now, we also, I don't think we give on the opinion for the compliance audit, and that's what actually the single audit is what Robert Senior was referring to. That's where we apply compliance attributes that are prescribed by this Office of Management and Budget Circular A133. They call that the single audit, and that's on page 70, I believe. And that last paragraph reads, in our opinion, the district complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements referred to above that could have direct and material effect on each major federal program for the year ended August 31, 2012. And the federal programs are listed on that schedule of federal expenditures on page 75. That lists all your federal expenditures for fiscal year 2012, which you're reporting 18.2 million. And what we do again is we sample some of these programs and test the compliance features to make sure you're compliant with that, with the single audit law. And again, we had no exceptions. That concludes my presentation. Yannicka, I don't know if you wanted to go into your presentation or just ask if they've had any general questions.
Any questions for you?
Sure.
Questions at this point? No questions at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. In your audit, if you would turn to page 4, please. From page 4 to page 12 is the MD&A or Management Discussion and Analysis that Mr. Carter was mentioning is prepared by the district. And here is where we provide the financial highlights, and it is a summary of all of our financials. I'll begin with the first bullet point. The district's total combined net assets increased by $9,054,732. The total net assets as of August 31st, 2012 were $87,560,772, compared to last year at $78,506,440. And this data was also discussed by Mr. Carter. These are the government-wide financials that he just reviewed with you. In more detail, the general fund ended with an overall fund balance of $49,627,410. This was an increase of $7,958,538 over last year. In the next bullet point, I'll break down that increase to differentiate or list separately the one-time adjustments that we've included in this audit. For the year ended August 31st, 2012, the general fund recorded total revenues of $69,751,007 and total expenses of $66,321,876. This calculates an excess of revenue over expenses of $3,429,131. And after a thorough review of our financials, we identified prior period adjustments that calculate to $3,867,276, which is an increase to our fund balance, but want to differentiate that from the total increase to fund balance between what was excess of revenue over expenditures for the year and what we identified as a one-time adjustment. These adjustments were misclassifications of receipts of state revenue in prior fiscal years. And when we started that review, of course, we started reviewing our balance sheet, and throughout the year, the state, if there's an adjustment to the calculation that the state made as to what the districts were owed on foundation, and some of those adjustments are in property value. And just to give you one example, I believe it was June of this year, if you recall, we had hired DRV to do a PEMS review. And when they did that PEMS review, they found $357,000 from 07-08, I believe, that the district had never received. And that was a report that wasn't completed back then. And as a result of that finding, we were able to claim that. So that's a prior period receipt that was identified. And I brought up that example because that was a very recent one. And if you recall, we had that over the summer. Now, the ones that we have identified here were from prior period receipts from adjustments to property value. At different times, the state can approve an appraisal value higher than what our appraisal district presents. We then, I guess you can say, file a claim against that, and those receipts would then sometimes, if we do win, come in at a later year. So the manner in which they were recorded when they were received was not presented on the income statement to flow into the fund balance. Now that we have clarified that, that's why we're presenting a one-time adjustment in order to put that into the fund balance. We also have other financial sources of $662,131. And for some of the board members that were here, in February, when we completed our 2011 audit, and it was presented in December, we then in February brought one of the recommendations to be approved, which was the reclassification of the S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D fund. It used to be under special revenue, and based on their recommendation, we transferred it over to general fund, and that's what we would call a transfer in. The total of those three items is the increase of our general fund balance of $7,958,538. For the next bullet point, the district's internal service fund, which is our health insurance, ended with a fund balance of $3,725,609. This was an increase of $676,570 compared to last year. For the year ended August 31st, the internal service fund recorded revenues of $7,730,700 and total operating expenses of $6,339,767. That was in excess of $1,390,933. From that excess, we did a prior period adjustment, and if you recall, last year we had a finding on our general fund balance, and it was a payroll, under the payroll liabilities item. Well, this finding was an overpayment on the general fund side, and the correction, now that it was corrected, will now show as a one-time adjustment on the on our self-funded insurance plan, where we returned it back to general fund. Again, we did a real thorough review of that balance in order to reconcile all of the movements, which, with the excess and the adjustment, was the net change, which was still an increase to our health insurance fund of $676,750. For our last bullet point, the bond series 2008 had a total expenditure of $5,290,411, and it was spent in accordance to our bond series, our bond issue series 2008, as voted by our taxpayers in 2004. Now, if you turn to page 17 of your audit, you can get to that page. Page 17 of our audit is the statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance for governmental funds. So this page, we list out the general fund, debt service fund, and other funds separately. Based on a recent compliance on our Texas Education Code Section 44.008, this page will be published in our newspaper by January 28th. Right now, we're proposing that it be published on January 13th, but we're working on that. Also, the entire audit report will be included on our, by January 28th, will be posted on our website as well. Now, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Ms. Laura Douglas and her staff, our district comptroller, for all of the work that they did on this audit. She, dedicated a lot of time, and which she says blood and guts into this. But I really want to say thank you. Now, does the board have any questions?
Questions? Thank you. Dr. Ackerman, speak.
And I would like to take this time to thank Ms. Valdez for being an outstanding CFO.
Thank you.
And for having a staff that likes to research and find all of those prior year adjustments.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, if there's no questions?
No questions? Discussion? Okay.
Okay.
The recommendation, please.
Well, the administration recommends approval of the audit report for 2011-2012 school year as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mrs. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter and
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Carter. Thank you. That brings us to discussion action item B, consideration to approve the resolutions to designate authorized representatives for investing. Again, presenter Ms. Valdez.
Good evening again. Now, this resolution is something new. It has not been a requirement. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe we'd getting the names wrong, okay. Okay,
No, they're both Carters.
they're both Carters.
Yes, they're both Carters. It's father and son. Yes.
Just wanted to make sure, because they left. Thank you, go ahead.
This resolution is new. We currently have two CDs, and one of the entities that we have the investment with is requesting that we have a board resolution signed by the board president and the board secretary, where it specifically identifies the interim superintendent and the CFO as the authorized representatives for investing. We have two CDs, and the first CD with Southside Bank was just renewed this month, actually in December. And the next CD with Comerica, and based on the current rates that they have, and based on our financial advisor's recommendations, potentially we would be renewing with them. And this is a new form that they are requiring. In order for us to renew with them, we would re-sign the documents, and as part of those documents that need to be signed, they've included a request for a resolution. Is there any questions?
Questions? Discussion? If there's no discussion or questions, the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution for the authorized representatives as presented under separate cover.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to discussion action item C. Consideration to approve training contract with Deanna Reese for shared and guided reading sessions for teachers. Presenter Dr. Garza and Patricia Brown.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, and Dr. Ackerman. In October, I came before you for approval of 4 consultant contracts for our campuses and AYP school improvement. These consultants are providing modeling, coaching, and training in math and reading to the teachers at those campuses and Saturday camps for the students at the elementary campuses. In November, Dr. Ramirez came before you for approval of required AYP training from Region 15 for the campuses and AYP school improvement. And today, I come before you for approval of another consultant, Diana Reese, to provide shared and guided reading, modeling, and coaching for 3 campuses. These campuses did not meet AYP because of their reading scores, and they have requested Mrs. Reese come and train their teachers. The funding for this contract will come from the Title I funds that are specifically reserved for professional development and have to be used this school year. Are there any questions?
Questions? Comments? Discussion? Yes, Mr.
I just have one. Now, where is this money coming from? Is this already something already budgeted?
Yeah, because the campuses are in AYP school improvement,
From the
they're
students
required to use part of their Title I funds for this.
I might have missed that. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, more curious than anything else. When these trainings take place, the curriculum coordinators are on site, I guess, watching,
Yes.
being a part of it?
Right, our curriculum coordinators are following the consultants and learning the strategies
Right, 'cause
along with them.
in between
Right.
consulting,
So when the consultants aren't here, then our coordinators are, so they can continue the training, yes, most definitely.
any other questions?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay. Okay, if there's no discussion, the recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the interim superintendent to sign the contract and authorization of payment to Diana Reese.
If we've heard the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned, Ms. Lozano has seconded. Show of hands, all in favor? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to discussion action item 8D. Consideration to approve 2012-13 local articulation agreement between Southwest Texas Junior College and San Felipe Del Rio C.I.S.D. Presenter Dr. Sally Zuniga Barrera and Roger Gonzalez. Apparently just Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, Denise Rubio is here also with the high school.
Denise Rubio is here on
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, board members, again, I come before you for a consideration to approve the 2012-2013 local articulation agreement between Southwest Texas Junior College and San Felipe Del Rio CISD. The Articles of Agreement is used to document the local articulation between Southwest Texas Junior College and the San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Local articulation develops a partnership between Southwest Texas Junior College, Del Rio High School, and local businesses, aimed at preparing students for an increasingly competitive job market. Del Rio High School Career and Technical Education, CTE students have an opportunity to earn free college credit towards an associate's degree at Southwest Texas Junior College. The articulated advanced skill programs are Administrative Information Technology, Child Development, Computer Information Systems, Criminal Justice, and Management. Attached to your package is your 2012-2013 local articulation agreement between Southwest Texas Junior College and San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Also attached are the recommended graduation plans, 6-year plans, teacher assurances, and list of articulated courses. Any questions?
Questions, discussion? There's no questions or discussion, the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the board approve the 2012-2013 local articulation agreement with Southwest Texas Junior College as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motioned, Mr. Chavita has seconded. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion action item E, consideration to approve the most highly qualified architectural service provider for the district's minor projects per RFQ 13-01. Presenter, Mr. Miguel Salinas.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. The selection of the architect is based on demonstrated competence and qualifications to perform the services for a fair and reasonable price rather than by competitive bidding process. Under separate cover in your packet, you have a summary of the qualifications of the recommended architect, Graves & Associates, to perform the services as requested in RFQ 13-01. Graves & Associates from Uvalde has 41-plus years of experience and has maintained a 36-plus year relationship with our district, and I've listed multiple projects that Graves & Associates has designed for us in the district, and it's not all inclusive. I'll go ahead and read a few of them. Fermin Calderon Elementary, Bonnie Green Elementary, Del Rio High School Stadium Expansion, North Heights Elementary additions and renovations, currently Ruben Chavita Elementary additions and renovations, it's in the construction phase, Del Rio High School turf and track renovations, to name a few. In your packet, you also have the request for qualifications that was published in accordance. And so at this time, it's the recommendation of the administration that the San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees approve the selection of Graves & Associates as the most highly qualified architectural service provider for the district's minor projects as presented, and approve the interim superintendent to negotiate and sign a contract at a fair and reasonable price for a 3-year period as indicated in our request for qualifications.
Before I call for the motion and vote, are there any questions on this? Or comments? Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita, or Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Mr. Chivito, are you voting? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graves.
Discussion action item F, consideration to approve the first reading of revisions to CDC, DCB, and GKD local policies. Again, Mr. Salinas.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. These revisions to our local policies are being recommended to better clarify the intent and specifics of the aforementioned policies. They have all been reviewed by our attorneys, and the majority of the language is coming from them, obviously with input from administration. Under separate cover, I provided you with a color-coded revised policies and a summary of the revisions of each of the policies. Deleted text I placed in red strike-through font. Added text I placed in text in blue font. And moved text I placed it in a green font for your review. I also prepared a little summary for you, and I'd like to go ahead and read those. The CDC local policy revision considerations is based on revised and deleted language to more clearly indicate that all gifts or bequests shall be approved by the Board of Trustees, and that the gift or bequest must be unconditional, and that the Board of Superintendent has the right to refuse any gift or donation offered to the district. And that's the main summary. For DCB local policy revision considerations, it has revised and deleted language that clearly identifies assistant principals as aspect certified employees eligible to receive a Chapter 21 term contract for a 2-year or 3-year term depending on years of employment with the district. In addition, deleted language that clearly indicates that an employee in a position for which neither SBEC nor the district requires current SBEC certification, but for which a Chapter 21 contract was previously issued, shall continue to receive a Chapter 21 contract for a 2-year or 3-year term, depending on years of employment with the district. GKD local policy revisions added language to more clearly indicate the scope of use by non-school user groups, and that fundraising activities by non-school user, non-profit, or for-profit groups is not allowed. In addition, added language that indicates a minimum of 2 weeks needs to be allowed for facility use requests to be processed by the district. And I want to stress that non-school user groups for GKD local is referring to groups that are not school-related or school-affiliated as defined by GE local. So booster clubs, parent-teacher organizations, and the District Education Foundation would not fall under this policy. So it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of revisions to CDC, DCB, and GKD local policies as presented.
Before calling for the motion and the vote, any questions about this? First reading, okay. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Mr. Chivito has motion, Mr. Mesa has seconded. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Now we're on to item G, consideration to approve the memorandum of understanding for preventive dental services with the Department of State Health Services. Again, Mr. Salinas is presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. On September 26th, the administration received a letter from the Texas Department of State Health Services requesting permission to hold limited oral evaluation clinics at 6 of our elementary schools. I have attached the letter for you under separate cover. Those schools were selected randomly to participate in this survey. The schools that were selected were Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, Garfield, Lamar, North Heights, and Ruben Chavita. All of the services performed during the basic screening are going to be free of charge to our students, and the data they obtain is going to be reported as cumulative totals and does not identify any specific school or individual student's identity. Dr. Matthew Williams, the regional dentist, and Cynthia King, the regional dental hygienist, will work with our school nurses and my office to coordinate this project. However, before they can coordinate the basic screening dates, we need to authorize the memorandum of understanding, which has also been attached under separate cover for your review. It's a very basic MOU, just saying that we will provide a location for them and that we will coordinate our efforts with each of those schools that are listed at a time that is the best and most convenient for our principals. This item was brought to them at the principals' meeting. They all agreed they wanted to participate. We just have to coordinate the date now.
And it's my understanding that this has been going on in other districts as well, right? Nearby districts, I think Eagle Pass, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know which other districts, but this is something that they're doing across the state in order to gather data on the dental health of students in public schools.
But who counselor has no cavities?
So at this time, it's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees authorize our interim superintendent of schools to sign the memorandum of understanding for preventative dental services with the Department of State Health Services as presented.
Any questions before calling for the vote? Ms. Lozano has a question.
What kind of communication and release of information, for the lack of a better term, will parents be getting about this?
According to the letter, that they will be receiving a letter explaining what this process is going to be by, and also some information on the HIPAA rules, so that the parents can decline the service if they want to.
So they can opt out?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Do we need it repeated? We've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion. Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. You did vote.
Yes.
Yes. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item H, consideration to approve the following contracts. Employment agreement, non-chapter 21 contract, one-year probationary contract, multi-year term employment agreement, certified professional personnel, continuing contract, certified professional personnel, employment contract addendum, retire, rehire employees, multi-year term employment contract for tips programs, certified professional personnel, dual assignment, one-year term contract for certified classroom teacher coach, dual assignment term contract for certified classroom teacher / coach, all presented by Dr. Patricia McNamara.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. It's that time of the year for us to start looking at our contracts and reviewing them. So as has been the practice in the past, our district provided our attorneys, Mr. Rick Lopez and Mr. Joe Hoffer, a copy of our existing contracts. They reviewed those contracts and sent them back to us for your consideration this evening. In your packet that was provided in the legal envelope folder are each of the contracts. There's two versions. One is a tracked version that the attorneys sent us, and the other one is a clean version that will be, upon approval, will be sent to the printers. The basic changes, or the primary changes in each of the documents. Number one, Mr. Hoffer wanted you to know that the consideration was made to make sure that they were consistent from contract to contract. So the language was inserted in blue, as Mr. Mike Salinas had mentioned earlier, and in red would be any of the deletions. One of the major deletions was because we do not have an incentive pay program that was deleted, and therefore each of the contracts had to be reformatted to reflect that change. And other than that, there were just a few minor considerations in clarification of the language of the contract. And I'd like to point out on the retiree addendum contract, number 5, which refers to the acute shortage area, was completely deleted because we can now hire outside the acute shortage areas for retirees if we so desire.
to do so. So those were the only changes. They were minor in nature this year, but each year it has been the practice of the district to have them reviewed. So at this time, it's administration's recommendation that the School Board of Trustees approve the contracts as presented and revised by our attorneys.
Questions before calling for the
No
vote?
question, but I'm glad that we're bringing this up.
Yes, sir.
They are clear, more clear, and certainly there's the thing that had to come out, so.
Yes.
Other questions? We've heard the recommendation. Is there a need to repeat it? Okay, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has a motion, Mr. Mesa a second. All in favor by a show of hands?
Thank you.
Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to discussion action item I. Consideration to approve superintendent search, myself presenting. I gave each trustee a copy of the paperwork that I also have electronically. Let me just take a few minutes and kind of go back over the history of this. This is what we've seen before. The edits are dates because we're at a different point in time. By this point in the process, the documents that you're looking at, they've gone through the revisions and review, including from Mr. Hoffer to make sure that what needs to be on the documents is on the documents, how it would work. So all of that's been reviewed and cleared with him. I've been working on it with him over the last several days to make sure this is all in order. I also have it on a USB, if you would prefer to put it up on the screen and kind of walk through it, or if you just want to go page by page, it's the board's discretion. Okay, we'll just go over it page by page, I guess. All right.
Well, the audience would like to follow along unless they have it.
No, they don't have a copy. We'll put it on the screen. Do we have someone who can handle that? And then once he gets it on the screen, it'll help review, and I'll just walk you through the same exact thing. When you open that flash drive, there's going to be two folders, and it's the second one. It should say new folder 2. Okay. Now,
You can't see.
can you? There we go. All right. We're going to start with there should be one that says announcement. It's a Word file, not an Excel file.
Superintendent announce?
Yes, go ahead and open that. That should be the first one that we're looking at here. Okay, again, we're on paper or we're on the overhead. So this is kind of the stock announcement that describes, you want it larger, Cecily?
Well, if they can't see it,
Okay.
no, I'm fine. I have it in front of me.
Okay, that kind of puts it in context. This is what you would find on the website, outlining the superintendent is accountable to the board and expecting the superintendent to be chief executive officer. List the minimum qualifications, as we had discussed previous. And again, this comes about from 6 months ago. We had reached this point and looking at it and agreeing on it. The preference of a doctorate, certainly it must have Texas superintendent certification, total compensation package, benefits package available. And then from there, some bullet points kind of indicating what we're looking for in a superintendent. And the way this would work is that there would be a link on the HR page. If you remember, at one time there was an announcement that said superintendent vacancy. So someone would click that icon, it would take them to these pages, and the first thing they would see is this. So that would be kind of the general overview and instructions. And so an applicant will need to complete the application, which we'll look at in just a moment, be required to submit a letter of interest and current resume, service records from previous school district or districts, official college/university transcripts, copies of certifications, credentials, a concise statement about their beliefs, philosophy of school administration, leadership, experience with each area, and how they would lead San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Now, this whole process, when we agreed how we were going to do it, this is fully within the board's domain, and so an applicant puts all of this together, and then they submit it to the attorneys. Mr. Schulman is the point of contact, so someone applying puts all of these things together, they submit all of those documents to Schulman, Lopez, and Hoffer, LLP, with the address. We want to keep it streamlined as possible. It's purely within the board's oversight. The statements below are also applicable to law, like the very last one, that we don't discriminate on the basis of race, ethnicity, sex, age, national origin, that applicants will be informed of the board's selection and appointment of new superintendent, and of course, that the selection is sole responsibility of the board. So this is the first thing someone would see. Okay, you can close that one, Mike. And then, you'll see up there my Excel files, and the one we need to open that will take us to the first page of the application. It should say,
Employment application?
yeah, I think that's going to be the first page. Go ahead and hit that. Okay. I will kind of warn you that it prints out correctly, depending on the program you open it up in. Electronically, it looks a little different, but what the board's looking at, you see what it looks like when it's printed out. Yes. Again, this is something that was taken, and Mr. Hoffer went through it, updated it, kind of created from an earlier application that the district used to use into an application specifically for this search. And he and I discussed it, went back and forth, and again, this is something we're looking at for several times. It says on the paper version revised in '09, but that's not accurate. It was revised recently. I don't know how you changed the footer, but that's just a technicality. If you look at this first page, it's all pretty standard: date of application, social, driver's license, names, availability for employment, etc., those types of things. And then down at the bottom, it asks for their education and training. Mr. Offer also made sure that the Spanish disclaimers were on there. The next page, you can close that one. Okay. It's going to be another Excel file, Mike. It should say background information. It should see something.
Background references?
Yes. Open that one. It's got this page, the accomplishments, background information, references. Now, on the references, again, kind of standard application that we're using. They'll be required to submit at least 3 references. There's also the option, you'll notice, that an applicant could obtain letters of recommendation in lieu of references on the application and have those sent to the law office. So that's also standard and important to have references listed in some form. Okay, we can close that one. And an Excel file that should say certification. This is the third page of the application where they'll list their certifications, specializations, work experience, verification, that they're the person filling this out, that they're accurate statements, and their signature that completes that component of the application. Okay, we can close that. And the next one should say nepotism. There we go. This one, an applicant would list whether or not they're related to a Board of Trustee member and how that relation is so. Also a reminder there at the bottom, and of course a place for them to sign, that they're testifying to that. Reminder again there at the bottom, on this application of what they must submit and where they submit it to. Same as what we saw on the very first page, but this one's attached here on the application. And then
I'm sorry, but right there where it says affinity, why does it have that same line twice? Board member spouse is the applicant's blank, or board member spouse is the applicant's blank? Am I reading that correctly?
Well, the first one said board member spouse is the applicant.
Oh, okay,
Or
okay.
board member spouse is the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we can close that one, I think, now, Mike. Yeah, I don't know where that disappeared. Ceci just pointed out there's a couple missing letters down there at the bottom. That's, I think, an Excel thing. That can get fixed.
Where are the asterisks?
They're not. I think it's like Hoffer or Schulman's way of saying, pay attention to this, required items.
Oh, okay, so that's referred to
Yeah,
that.
yes.
Okay.
I mean, that could be taken out if.
No,
you
I'm
think that's-
just,
Yeah. It's like, don't forget, submit application, resume, et cetera, if you're doing this. Okay, then we'll go to, I think it's a Word file, internal applicant. This is if there's an internal applicant in the district. Also, again, it was kind of reviewed and updated, made sure it was correct. Self-explanatory, I think. And then, closing that, you're gonna see one that says, I think it should say, it's a, what do you call it, a publisher file. It's new goals, if you'd open that. Now, this is not, part of the application paperwork. I mean, it's not something that's being filled out, but it's a form that we had we had looked at previous and we had developed and decided that it would be distributed to districts within a surrounding area. Hoffer also says that when all of these go on the website as a link, that this would also be there, just kind of for consistency. That way an applicant couldn't say, oh, well, I didn't know there was a brochure that had, other information or a timeline or something. So what would be posted is those complete pages, including that brochure. And then the brochure can be printed out in a very nice format, and we could send some to San Angelo, to Dallas, to Eagle Pass, kind of a surrounding area that's deemed appropriate. Now, it would also, the vacancy, as we had discussed previous, about 6 months ago, I guess, that the vacancy would be advertised externally, meaning, like Texas ISD or TASB or something like that. But that would be an indication in those outside sites, it'd be a link, as I see it, that would take the applicant to the HR page to where they'd find these documents, fill them out, print them out, send them to the attorney. Is everybody clear on the process? That I know it's been 6 months since we discussed and agreed, but it hasn't changed in any substantial way. Like I said, there's been editing and updating time-wise to make sure it works. And so the last thing I want to point your attention to, again, taking the original intent from 6 months ago and timeline as the guide, we can look at the brochure for this, if you pull it up and you can see it in paper. The brochure reiterates what's on the other documents, also mentions the board and who they are, equal opportunity policies, again, what needs to be submitted by an applicant, and who it goes to. The important dates is the tentative timeline. Now, 6 months ago, we were talking about a window of 4 to 6 weeks of it being open, so if this can be posted, if this can be up and running within the next couple of days, that would put us at the 7 to 8 week window. If for some reason it could not be posted until coming back from Christmas break, from vacation, then that would still put it at about, I think, a 4 to 5 week window. I'm hoping that this is something that can get posted up on the website by the end of the week.
I think technology can get that posted.
Okay, I think we're reasonably sure that technology can do that. So that puts, it puts an applicant, for example, in the position to where by the end of the week, they can start working on this, and early in January send it off to the attorneys, and their package is complete. So we're looking at, and again, it's tentative timeline, that in early February, the application deadline hits and it closes. About a week after that, we'll review the applications, see who's applied. Assuming that there's 15 or 20 applicants, you know, as a board, we come back in a meeting, we review those, choose 4, 6 people to interview, whatever we determine, and about 10 or so days later, we conduct interviews. This is again kind of the timeline we were looking at. Possibility of a follow-up interview for maybe the strongest couple of candidates would be in early March. And I was mindful of, you know, like spring break and the testing and all that, try to figure out a way that this made the most sense time-wise. If necessary, the board can visit the home district by the end of March, which if everything was in order after that, and the 21-day posting requirements, then the board could be voting as early as April the 25th, 2013.
The only thing on the March 4th board visit date might come in conflict because the winter conference is March 7th.
Okay. Well,
And then the next week is whole week, I think.
which next week?
I mean, that's board visits, home district of candidate if needed.
Right, the 25th and 26th,
That's-
if needed. And again, it's tentative. I mean, we're trying to set a timeline. So, you know, it could be the week before.
Even if it's tentative, that week doesn't work.
Okay, well, do we want to change that board visits home
And
district?
all these dates, are they Saturdays? What,
No.
8th, 15th?
No, the 8th is, I believe that's a Friday,
And so the 15th is also Friday.
yes. See, we run up against things like regular scheduled board meetings, we run up against all these things that, you know, we're certainly able to finagle some dates, but without putting too fine of a point on it, we have to be prepared to be inconvenienced in terms of the dates, when we're going to meet, when we're going to do this. But again, the timeline is tentative. The deadline for the application is not. We're saying that publicly, right, February the 8th. The timeline, if you want to change, you know, like a possible home visit or something, it does say if needed, so.
But by the time this goes out, it won't be tentative anymore, am I
Well,
correct?
no, we can still, that's what I'm saying, we can, if you want to adjust, you seem to be most concerned with the board visits home district of
Only
candidate. if
because
needed.
that's
Right.
an
Okay.
important week.
Well, we can,
Not that I'd go anyway, but people might have
okay, let's
conflicts.
look at the calendar. That's okay, I mean, it's all electronic. Now, Cecily's talking about the March 25th, 26th dates of a possible visit to a candidate's home district if needed. The 25th and 26th of 2013 is a Monday and Tuesday. And as she points out, that week is,
Testing week.
it's in March. That week
It's
is.
testing
is-
Oh, no, I'm looking at April, sorry. That's Easter,
Easter, right. The Monday and Tuesday before Good Friday. You know, there's also, well, if y'all want to adjust a date,
I think we can adjust this week, because, I mean, there probably will be some adjustments.
I think other than the deadline, Mr. Mesa, you know, the February the 8th, the others are subject to revision. I don't see a problem. You know, we might, for example, you know, get to the point to where, okay, the interviews, originally, we said the 25th and 26th, but it's a couple days different, so. The date we're concerned about is the possible visiting some other district, right?
If needed.
If needed. You want to leave it, or? Okay. And it wouldn't be a full board, right? I mean, something like that would occur because, say, the regular meeting just before, the board would, like, create a committee. As, for example, Bob and Raymond and, you know, Ceci, a 3-member committee, go to XYZ district and, you know, kind of fact-finding mission, something like that. Okay? I mean, it's the prerogative of the board. I spent days and days and hours editing. I don't have a problem with a little bit more, so. So now's the time for any questions or comments. I don't know what else to say other than, we were here 5 or 6 months ago. This isn't.
That sounds great.
Okay. Concerns?
All for trying to get it put up before we go on holiday.
Yeah, I've certainly, don't have the technical know-how, but Dr. Ackerman thinks technology is capable of doing that.
Technology can do that.
I don't think that's a big problem. I'd be glad to be here at whatever time tomorrow and kind of make sure whoever's doing it knows what we're putting and in what order, that sort of thing. So wouldn't be a problem on my part. Anything else? In a moment, I'll make a recommendation, we'll vote. I'd also like to say that, we've been very fortunate that Dr. Ackerman's been our interim for the last 6 months and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future of her contract. I hope everybody knows that we've been very well served by her leadership.
We just got $4 million on our fund balance. You can't.
And, Dr. Ackerman as interim is superintendent, powers and authority, and until someone else is superintendent, she continues to be that. So I think the board understands that, and I hope everybody else understands that. Okay? So we're good then for a recommendation? Okay, it's the recommendation of the board president that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent search documents, timeline, and process presented, and direct administration to post all relevant search documents on the district's webpage and any applicable external websites. Is there a motion? Mr. Chavita has motion. Is there a second? Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor, by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to discussion action item J, which also I'm presenting. Discussion and consideration of January board meeting date. A quick look at the calendar for January the 3rd Monday of the month, which of course is the time for the next regular meeting, is January 21st, which is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. So we might want to entertain the idea of moving the date. Now that's
a work day though.
Yes, it's not a district holiday, but it is a federal holiday, and it's certainly in honor of someone that is an icon and hero of the nation. It's just the thought. I know in the past people have brought it up. Why are you working or why are you meeting? It's just something for the board to consider and discuss. It's at your discretion. Dr. Ackerman, is there anything specific about moving the date, or is it just, again, purely?
No, just to give the board an opportunity if they wanted to change it was all.
Okay.
As far as the staff, that's a work day for staff. It's not for students, but for staff.
Okay.
I think we can just leave it.
Leave it. Is there anyone desiring to change it? Anyone strong feelings one way or the other?
Not for me.
No? Okay. Then we don't need a motion, we just move on. Okay.
Discussion.
What's that?
There's just discussion.
Discussion and action item. There's no action on it. Okay, so we're gonna leave the date as is. Okay, it's now 9 p.m., December the 19th, 2012. Which brings us to agenda item 9, closed session. Board may adjourn in closed session on any item listed above or below as appropriate to that item pursuant to, including but not limited to the following sections of Texas Open Meetings Act. So you stated December 19, 2012, it's 9 p.m. The board will now recess this open session and convene in closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, subchapters D and E. Specifically tonight, listed sections are 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney, report on pending legal issues, and report on settlement status, professional employee service credit replacement. Number 1, consultation with legal counsel concerning teacher arrest and criminal charges. B, 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. C, 551.073, discussing negotiated contracts for professional donations. D, 551.074, discussion of personnel against personnel. 1 being consideration to approve new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. E, 551.076, regarding security. F, 551.082, to deliberate discipline for a student or hearing on employee complaint against another employee. For G, 551.084, exclusion of a witness from hearing. Those are the applicable sections, and I've noted the ones specific. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open meeting. We're now in closed session. It's now 10:12 p.m., December 19th, 2012. The board will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. Coming out of closed session, reconvened into open session, we're on agenda item 11, discussion action items. A, consideration to approve new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Presenter, Dr. Patricia McNamara.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. This time, the administration recommends the following applicants for hire in our school district. Ms. Jessica Solis for the 3- and 4-year-old migrant teaching program. Ms. Rebecca Morgan for the methodology for academic and personal success, better known as MAPS teacher, at the Del Rio High School. Additionally, we have the following recommendations. Ms. Alma Rojas, math teacher, San Felipe Memorial Middle School. Shelley Hans, Title I evaluator for Annex 2. Rosanna Nieto, budget coordinator for our administration building. And lastly, Ms. Julie Cox, HR finance coordinator for the administration building.
We've heard the recommendations. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion. Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Brings us to the final item on the agenda. And before we do that, I just wanted to thank everyone, each board member, for their dedication and service this year, and looking forward to the same in the coming year. Also to Dr. Ackerman, our interim superintendent, certainly, and the cabinet as well. So with that, being no further business before this board, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Overfelt has motion and Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Merry Christmas.